Deandre Jordan talk about how his feet were bleeding by the end of that game.
Catches quickly behind his back. Catch Jackson turning, and look out, here he comes. 23 and white. Scotty for three. And Anderson goes right away. Stockton comes over on the double team. Now back to Scotty.
And he was a nice person, those reporters. He saved my life. Michael was walking out, and the group of reporters who were all talking to him as he walked out. I was leading the group with my reporter there, and I was...
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, basketball fans of all ages, welcome to the Double Clutch podcast on a day that is set for confusion and probably failure on our parts to keep up with what's going on in the conversation. Because, of course, we have decided to record on the opening of the trade deadline. I don't know whose stupid idea this was. Kirk, I'm blaming you because, you know, you're the only guy who's behind all the controls on this thing. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. My name is Huw Hopkins, and I'm going to be sort of running the show a bit like sort of late 90s Utah Jazz today, because we're going to be talking a lot about the draft, and I'm just going to be setting people up. All right. So to the right of me on the screen, you can see there is Tom Hall, and he's going to be like my Karl Malone. I'm going to be dropping it off to him. How's it going, Tom? You all right?
I'll take that. It's going well. I'm still in shock after the big news that broke just before we came on that Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is going to opt out of his contract and take calls from around the league.
We'll get to that and more, no doubt. But of course, that dynamic duo on the Utah Jazz, they also needed Jeff Hornacek to kick out to in the corner. And we are welcoming to the first time on the show, ladies and gentlemen, Harry Harrison. How's it going, Harry?
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. I've been working towards this my entire life. I don't have a basketball-related witty reply like Tom did. I thought that was quite clever, but you know, thank you very much for having me.
Well, Tom's a seasoned veteran. We expect that from him. Okay, you're a rookie. We can work on that.
I've been working on that all day. So
no, it's good to have you, Harry. To be fair, like I'm sort of throwing this on you a little bit out of the blue, but when we have someone new on the show, we sort of just say hello and we get them to tell us a little bit about yourself. So for those who haven't read your work on UK, even though they should have done, and I'm pretty sure everyone has. Where do you come from? Why are you joining us on the podcast today?
Well, I'm joining you because Tom very nicely, politely asked me to, and I thought I can't say no.
No, you can say no to that handsome face.
Exactly. I'm studying in Sheffield. I'm from Sheffield, studying journalism. Do a lot of writing. Thought experience doesn't hurt, so I've got writing for Double Clutch. I'm head of Sport Hour, student newspaper in Sheffield as well. So that's me, I guess.
And you claim to be a Minnesota Timberwolves fan, don't you? So you've taken great interest in this year's draft.
Yes, I've taken great interest in the fact that I have absolutely no idea what I want Gerson Rosas to do. Every day I read something else that makes me go, actually, I want to trade for him now, star. And next I hear, no, I don't. So, it's I am quite interested as well. Yeah.
Well, we will get completely into all of that. And of course, the guy making us all look pretty good is Captain Kirk. Thank you to him for a shout out to him for helping the show. Air horns all around. But guys, let's not mess around too much longer because, of course, today is the opening of the trade deadline. I guess the big thing, and I haven't checked Twitter in the last 30 seconds since I've been talking to you, but the big one that we sort of spotted about 20 minutes ago now is Chris Paul is on the move once again. He left Houston like 5 minutes ago, and then he he sort of reinvigorated his career. He became this sort of probably the best point guard at his age, at his stage of the career, in the history of the game, perhaps, and showed that he could still lead a team with the OKC Thunder. And now they're moving him on again. So the trade is CP3 and Abdel Nader is going to the Phoenix Suns in exchange for Rubio, Kelly Oubre Jr., Ty Jerome, Jalen Leck, a 2022 first round pick. Now, is that? Did I miss anything? That's a steal, right? That's a haul. What do we make of this? First reactions, please.
I like it. I think. Sorry, Harry.
Sorry. No. Go.
I think I really like it for both sides. I was trying to think about who's won it, and I think it's a fair deal for both sides. So with OKC, they've fully gone into blow it up mode now. I think Woj said they've got something like 17 first-round picks between now and 2026, which is just insane. So obviously this has given them a lot more flexibility. At the end of 2021, when there's going to be all those free agents around, they've got something like 56 million in cap space, and that's with CP3 and Booker on the roster already. Sorry, no, that's on the Suns now. I'm thinking about OKC. But it gives them so much flexibility, and I think it's good for them. With Phoenix, obviously, they're now a factor in the West, with a backcourt of Paul and Booker as well, and then Ayton, who's improving at the 5 as well. So I like it for both teams. I don't really think there's a loser. I don't know about you, Harry.
I think that, honestly, but only just, Sam Presti's done it again. Sam? Is it Sam? Have I made that up?
Yeah, it's Sam Presti.
I think he's done it again. I mean, granted, Chris Paul last season showed that he's still got it essentially, but it's another draft pick. Ricky Rubio will do exactly what OKC want him to do in terms of help the team offensively, whilst they're progressing up the Western Conference ladder once again. With time, and they've got, well, as I said, they've got another pick out of it. I think OKC have won by the slightest of margins. OKC won the trade, just because Chris Paul is getting on a bit now, isn't he?
Well, that's my point. So you guys sort of both hedged on the both sides won. Now, my first instinct, I'm inclined to agree with you, but let's be honest. Well, let me give you a bit of a history lesson. I think it was before both of you joined Double Clutch, right? I was on a podcast with the great Joe Hulbert. I'm pretty sure both of you guys know him. One of the real brains of NBA in the UK. On a Double Clutch podcast, I think it was 2 years ago, and I said that signing Chris Paul to the contract that he signed that off season, the Houston Rockets were going to regret it. Now, they haven't regretted it because they've been able to turn that into like 107 draft picks. But I think my concern back then was that it was a 4-year contract, was it? I think. Yep. My concern was these final 2 years, because he has played excellent so far. He's really lived up to that contract. But like I said, he's the oldest point guard to be playing at this level of success. Can he still do it?
The question is the injuries, isn't it? Because I don't think his production is going to drop that much from what we've seen in the last 2 years. If anything, in the backcourt, he's got Devin Booker now rather than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who, Booker's a step up from that. And so, I think as long as his legs can keep up with him, I think he'll be all right. As long as he's not on the sidelines, then it's got the possibility of looking at the John Wall contract, which is terrible. But I think as long as he can keep going.
But that's the issue, isn't it, Harry? I mean, let's be honest. He hasn't been able to finish a season for about 4 or 5 seasons now.
Well, yeah, I mean, particularly when you play like Chris Paul did. There was, particularly when he was in the Los Angeles, it was high tempo with the Clippers throwing lobs, lots of transition kind of stuff. He's always realistically played at a high pace. And that's going to take its toll on your knees. It's going to take its toll on your legs. And it may well be that in these final 2 years, as you said, Huw, that time will catch up with him. He has done great over the first 2 seasons. He's lived up to the money. I don't really know if he's going to do the same, which is why, as I said, that's why I thought OKC won it, but only just. But
I guess the upside is that he, on this team, he will not be needed to be the star. I mean, you've got Devin Booker, who, I often rib Suns fans and mainly Ross McLeod for loving him too much, because I think in the past few years he has just been score first and fuck everybody else. Oh, excuse me, I probably shouldn't be swearing live, should I? But screw everybody else. And then it's sort of like, and here's the rest of the gang. But I think with a true point guard, I mean, Ricky Rubio did wonders for him this year, and I think that's the reason why they actually did as well as they did last season. But with a true point guard who is aging and is probably going to be wanting to give the ball up a little bit, you're going to get the best out of Booker. You're going to get the best out of DeAndre Ayton. How do you think it'll really make those guys pop?
I'll be honest, I'd actually forgotten that DeAndre Ayton existed, and you've just reminded me there. And I remember when he came into the league, he was considered a pick and roll threat kind of thing. And Chris Paul, as we know, is a pick and roll god. So, that it could work. It could work really well for DeAndre Ayton's career for his next season. And of course, Devin Booker will potentially, we'll see, have less of a ball handling role. I don't suspect that he'll become the secondary ball handler to Chris Paul by any means, but maybe he'll have it in his hands a little bit less and allow the veteran leadership of Paul to lead the Suns as far as they can go, which will probably be the 10th seed.
And that's starting five now, I guess, like beyond just those three. You've got Chris Paul, Devin Booker. I imagine Oubre will slot in at the 3. And then you've got either Cam Johnson or Bridges.
Wasn't Oubre part of the trade?
Well, yeah, I think Oubre was part of the trade, was he not?
Sorry, yeah. I've got my notes all mixed up here.
No,
so
that's all right.
It'd be Bridges and Ayton then. And that's not a bad starting five. I mean, I know you're in the West where everyone's competing, but it's not terrible.
So
Go on.
I guess that's my question, right? The West has been incredibly difficult. Just shout out to a couple of the people that are watching live with us at the moment. Mike Miller is watching and he's suggesting that the heat in Arizona will actually help Chris Paul get warmed up a bit quicker, so it'll help keep his legs for a bit longer. But shout out to Ross as well, who's joining. Can only be one Ross McLeod. So with this new lineup now, with great point guard, Devin Booker becoming one of the best scorers, if not the best scorer in the league at the moment. Plus, you've got a big man who's probably going to be coming into his own. You get maturity. Hopefully, he won't be suspended for half the season. Where can we slot these guys in for next season in terms of the playoff race?
Well, that kind of ties into one of, I think it was Ross's question in the Discord just before we started, which was name 6 teams better than the Suns. And really, like I said before we started, I was noting down Western Conference teams that are going to be better than them, and I haven't named 6. I've named 5. So as much as I said they'll be the 10th seed, that was really just a.
Go on, I'm intrigued. Give us those 5.
A bit. I put the Warriors, Lakers, Clippers, the Nuggets, and the Mavs. And I very nearly put the Wolves, but I thought I'm taking the middle there.
The Wolves aren't going to be that high.
That.
So, Tom, where do you put them at the moment?
I think you'd be happy as the Suns if you were in the 7 or 8 spot. It would be so Suns if they were in that spot, and then with the new play-in format that comes in, they in fact don't make it because Chris Paul gets injured or something like that. That would just be too good. But, there for me. It is
a possibility, of course. It is. Yeah. I'm sure we're going to be talking a lot more about all of those players, really. And there's going to be plenty of content going up on doubleclutch.uk. So make sure you're reading the website to break down the trades. But let's move on to another trade, which sort of I feel like it's a bit of a damp squib, but I think it has the potential to sort of shape the way that the next. It's a domino that is going to be the first of many dominoes, especially with the LA Lakers. So we've got, I don't know if it was actually confirmed. I think it was confirmed, but Danny Green and the 28th pick going to OKC in exchange for Dennis Schroeder. Now, this suggests that perhaps the LA Lakers are thinking, well, let's not worry about re-signing Rajon Rondo. We don't need Danny Green, who, say what you want about him, he is shooting. It dropped off at times, but he was still, the defender that defended the toughest player on the wing for 3.5 quarters during the playoffs. His shooting dropped off at times, but during the season, it was close to 40%. In the playoffs, he struggled because he had a bad leg. But what do we make of this?
I think, again, it's one of them where I think for both sides it's okay not to just sit completely on the fence. For OKC, it's another first-round pick. And for them as well, I was going to say it on the trade before, but what a time for them to tank. Because, they competed last year when there were other teams tanking, and now they're the only team in the West, looking through those names, that I think will be trying to tank. And so, odds on they're going to be good for one of the top picks next year and what is going to be a very good draft. For the Lakers, it's a bit of a strange one because, like, Schroeder's okay. I think it's a good deal, but they've done this very early. And they've not left themselves much wiggle room with the finances and with the rest of the roster now to do stuff. So if KCP does go elsewhere, if Avery Bradley, they use his money to trade him and get something else. Now they're up against the cap with Schroeder coming in. They've not got much else to do to add to that roster. So it's going to be a 3-man train, really.
Harry, what do you reckon?
I think it was just the Lakers saying to Rondo, you can go, realistically. Rondo was, I suppose, at times you can call him a key part of that Lakers roster that made the championship run. Like every player on the Lakers that wasn't LeBron and Anthony Davis, every single one of them had a trough and a peak at one point. And I think it's just the Lakers saying to Rondo, you can go, and we're not fussed. Schroeder will do probably exactly the same as Rondo did. They're just filling that hole, and that's all that is for me on the Lakers part. But for the Thunder, as you've both said, it's another pick that Sam Presti has accumulated in his growing collection of first-round picks, and it'll he's setting himself up nicely for the next draft class, which I'm sure we've mentioned and probably will mention again is looking like it's going to be stacked. So yeah.
And I'm sure I've read somewhere that Danny Green's not going to end up at OKC anyway. Yeah. They're looking to flip him somewhere else, so it could end up being more picks, which is even more ridiculous.
How many first round draft picks can they get? That's the key. Give me over under on 21, right? I'm reckoning they're going to get around 22 draft picks, first round draft picks this year, and 17 next year, and 14 the following year. That's what I'm going with.
I think they're going to do what I do on 2K, which is I ended up playing my GM for so long that I had every single pick in an entire draft.
What
which could be what they're going to do in like a few years' time.
Right, so those are the trades that we know of just yet. But of course, with the start of trade season, everything just sort of bowls over into rumor, speculation, and some of the biggest ones that we've seen is, of course, Houston. They have a problem. They are losing stars left, right, and center. First of all, obviously they traded away Chris Paul last year in exchange for Russell Westbrook, who now seems like the immovable object. But of course, he probably wants out. They don't want him. But also on the flip side of that, you have James Harden saying, actually, show me the door. I'm cool. So the main story at the moment is that James Harden is trying to force his way to the Brooklyn Nets to join Kyrie and his old pal, his old running mate back from OKC days, Kevin Durant. Now, I haven't checked the rules in the past few months, but I'm sure they're still the same, that you can only use one ball on the court at the same time. That's correct?
I think so. They probably change it. But
So how is this going to work?
that was what I had written down, like almost exactly those words. I think their main problem is going to be that there's only one ball to go around, as well as between that and Kyrie, they're the two biggest issues going forward. But like that potential lineup, depending on who they give away, that potential lineup of Kyrie, Harden, Joe Harris, Durant, and DJ, that would just be nuts. I don't know what you think, Harry, about that. Whether it's realistic or just rumours at this stage. Yeah, or even just Harden managing to go there if they've got enough to get for him.
It is literally just the combining of egos, isn't it? It's the absolute melting pot of ball dominant egos, and I think if it goes through, it's a disaster waiting to happen. I don't think there was already questions about how good the Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving partnership was going to be. And throwing James Harden into the mix is just going to, I don't know, mess it up more. Or just make it even more difficult. How it'll go through though, because the contracts are massive. I reckon they'll probably have to make it a 3-team trade kind of thing, just to spread out some of the salary. I've done I play around with a trade machine sometimes, and I did one that included the Timberwolves.
Nice.
Of course. As ever.
In which the Wolves got Karis LeVert.
Oh, nice.
Just because I think one of the front office staff at the Wolves is one of LeVert's old agents, which would have been cool.
What are you giving up in that? Something like James Johnson and that's it?
Oh, yeah, just James Johnson. James Johnson and the Nets pick or the number 1 pick, because I don't think the number 1 pick is worth that much this year.
Fair.
And, you'll send James Johnson, Spencer Dinwiddie and Deandre Jordan to Houston to cover the salary cost. And then you'd have to do the rest in free agency just to cover the rest of the things in the Nets part. Because
you're throwing out some wild stuff there, Harry, and I guess that I guess that I understand now why your screen is so dark. I'm just watching the live feed now, and it looks like you're in one of them crime drama things where you're the anonymous source. So if you can brighten your laptop screen at all, then do so, because we're getting some shtick for it in the actual live feed. But don't worry too much, don't panic too much.
It's because he's dropping these takes about Minnesota being involved in the Harden trade. It doesn't want to be seen.
Yeah, we'll work on that for next time. That I think that Harden with the Nets, that could be, they could be scoring 150 points per game, right? But I think they're going to be allowing 170 points per game. Those three guys on the front, I mean, to be fair, in the right defensive system, Kevin Durant played very good defense. And of course, you do have DeAndre Jordan, who was, he was held up as a beacon of great defensive presence.
10 years ago.
10 years ago, exactly. And actually, I think if you go back and watch the tapes, I'm not saying he was bad, but I'm saying that he was part of a system that was designed to help him be a good defender. And he did very well in that role. How he's going to cope with the barn door just swinging open with, people driving past those guys constantly. I'm not sure whether there's enough defensive zeal from, let's say, Joe Harris to be able to cover up all those mistakes. What do you think, Tom?
I think the question you got to ask is, they can put out that, or Harden could put out that message to Shams that he wants to go to Brooklyn all he wants. But what are they going to give up to get him? Because as Houston, you need something massive to come back. Because your future is grim at the minute with hardly any picks until after 2026 because of what you gave up for Russell Westbrook. So you need some big stuff coming back. I don't know that Brooklyn's going to do that again because they've only just recovered from the Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce trade with Boston and giving up all those picks. So they're not going to do the same again, surely. I think the much more likely one is the other one that was mentioned in Sham's bomb earlier, where he said it was Brooklyn or Philadelphia. And I think if you're bringing Phil Simmons, if you're bringing Ben Simmons, that's a mixture of Bill Simmons and something else. If you're mixing Ben Simmons into the discussions, then that becomes a lot more likely. Then whether that would just be a straight up swap, whether you'd be adding picks either way, I'm not sure. But that's a more intriguing one to me, especially with Daryl Morey in Philadelphia.
Can you imagine the shooting with Russell Westbrook and Ben Simmons on the same team? That would be glorious, wouldn't it?
Not at all.
So the other half of that, of course, is Russell Westbrook. There's been a few rumors. One of the rumors that I saw floating around Twitter was that Michael Jordan would actually like him on the Hornets. Now, I can see why from a business perspective. From a basketball perspective, I see that as basketball hell in a sense, especially as because I don't know whether you guys saw. I think it was Kevin O'Connor was talking about how the Hornets are in a great position. They're probably going to be bad this year. You may as well tank for a bad pick in a good draft next year. And of course, the following year, if you get another bad year, then you're going to be having probably 2 bites at the cherry there, because you're going to have the high school draft and then you're going to have the college draft in that same year as well. So it's going to be a bit of a double draft. So should they be doing it, or should we? The other rumor, of course, is that he's going to the Knicks, which is the all-time Knicks rumor. They will find any way possible to get the biggest personality who is over the hill and doesn't have any knees left. That's just their story for the past 25 years. But there has been a lot of talk, and especially from our very own Nick Whitfield. He is banging the drum saying they're turning the corner. This year they're going to be sensible and they're going to do things the right way. Do we see any truth in any of the Russell Westbrook rumors?
I think maybe I've just listened to too much Kevin O'Connor, but I just think that I don't like him on any team, basically, unless you're giving up the absolute minimum to get him. If you're just offloading salary and you're someone like Charlotte just getting rid of Batum, then great. He's a bit of a
You
draw.
wouldn't be offloading salary, would you? You'd be bringing in a £47 million dollar player.
But, you're not giving up any future assets other than your cap space moving forwards. And he would be a bit of a draw in one of them places like Charlotte, where really, unless you're like a proper nerd and you love PJ Washington, you're not really going to be tuning in. And so, if you're going to be giving up future picks and stuff like that, then scrap it. I'm not interested. But if you're just swapping salary and getting him in, then fair enough.
What about you, Harry? You see a good line in place for Westbrook anyway?
No. I think Russell Westbrook has done and had it now.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to make any more crazy takes because I saw how the Twitch chat reacted to that Timberwolves trade.
Do it, come on. We need the heat.
I was just like, that's not actually going to happen. I don't believe that's going to actually happen. Just clearing that up. I'm not on the weed. But no, I don't. He's done and had it now. Russell Westbrook. He's had his glory, and 2K can give him as many 88 ratings as they like for the next few years. He's just going to be sat on a bottom feeder team. That's where he should be. He's not a winner as far as I'm concerned. He doesn't win basketball games.
Sorry to interrupt. Breaking news. Chris Haynes. It's massive. Prepare yourself. Potential free agent Avery Bradley to be courted by Golden State, Milwaukee, and several other contenders. Tell
you what, he'd be good for Golden State.
Mm-hmm.
I quite like that. They're going to need a bit of backcourt help. Obviously they've got two of the best in the game, but I think they're pretty shallow at that position, apart from the top players. So that could work well, I reckon. The other bit of news, and it sort of veers into a rumor before we move on to draft stuff. We'll get this one out of the way, mainly because it's to do with the Spurs. And in case you haven't noticed, I'm a Spurs fan. DeMar DeRozan has opted in to his final year of his contract now. But earlier in the day and yesterday, there's a lot of rumors that a couple of teams were after him, including the LA Lakers. Now, they threatened to send Kyle Kuzma to the Spurs. I'm not sure how many more ways you could insult the great Spurs franchise. But is that an option? I think the rumor was Kuzma and a pick, I think it was, for DeRozan. Any thoughts?
He's a scorer, but is he going to take people over the top? I don't think so. Especially when you're not shooting threes, it's the same old story with DeRozan. What value is he really going to have to a team that has already got superstars and just needs space? If anything, he's just going to clog up the room for those other big guys. So for me, a bit like Russ, but not to that extent. I wouldn't be giving up anything too positive for him.
Hold on, though. They just won a championship with Rajon Rondo, who
he was knocking down threes.
I thought he was doing quite well in the playoffs.
He did incredibly well. He was the huge reason why they won that championship. But historically, not a 3-point shooter. Historically, one of these guys who can only slash to the paint and occasionally pull up at mid-range area. Could that work for DeRozan?
I still don't think it fits with what the Lakers need. I mean, I don't blame DeRozan for opting into his player option, because if my head coach was Greg Popovich, I would too. But it just for the Lakers, it doesn't.
I'm not sure what you mean by that, Harry.
Well, Greg Popovich is the all-time coach, isn't he?
Well recovered.
Yeah. Yes, he is. The all-time coach. Just checking you in.
I said to myself before I came, just don't embarrass yourself. No, I didn't mean any slander to Greg Popovich. I firmly believe that he is the.
Come on, give us some heat. We need something aggressive.
No, I'm not doing it again.
Turn his feet off.
I'm scared of the Twitch chat. I've had it once already. I don't want it again. I'm scared. I just, for the Lakers, I don't think DeMar DeRozan is the right guy at all. I think if you can get somebody like Robert Covington who will play some defense and shoot some threes, that would be good. But DeMar DeRozan for the Lakers isn't the right fit, I don't think.
But also, right, especially now they've done Schroeder, I don't think there's any way they can actually make it work financially. Like, they can't take on that salary without offloading other big stuff, and now they've not got any big stuff. Now Danny Green's gone to do that. So,
right, enough of that. Let's move on. We're gonna start talking about the draft now, because of course we are 2 days away from that. 2 days? Yeah, Wednesday, isn't it? So. Before we get too much into the weeds of it, both of you, if you can, give me your 3 most talented players, regardless of where you think they're going to be drafted. Who are the big players that any team would be lucky to get on their team this year? Tom.
Just to preface it, it's important, I think, just for anyone that is literally coming into this and has no clue about what the draft is like on Wednesday. There are no stars in this draft at all. Like last year we had Zion, and we've had loads in previous years. In this one, there's literally nobody that people are like, this is a consensus number one. This is the one that everybody wants. In fact, everyone's on about trading out of the draft or trading down, because nobody really wants to gamble towards the top, which makes it interesting. So when I was looking through at the prospects, which are like my top 3 favourites, I wasn't even looking necessarily at the top 3 picks and all the mocks. So my favourite 3, I think, just in terms of ones that I can't see failing or busting, are Obi Toppin. He's the first one. He's a wing out of Dayton. Consensus-wise, he's kind of been the best player in college, and he's kind of rumoured to go between that 5 and 10 range. He's a great 3-point shooter. He's just a smooth scorer all around. A bit stiff on defence, but I think he's someone that's not going to fail. The reason he's not up there in the top 3, like rumoured mocks, is because he's 22 years old. So he's not going to come in, and he's not got the upside of some other players, but I think he'll slot in straight away and be fairly decent. Harry, who have you got for your Most intriguing guy.
Is this my top 3 best players in the draft, or the ones that I think?
Just give us your top one, and if it's not Obi Toppin, why not?
It's not Obi Toppin, purely because, and that's not a knock against Obi Toppin. I definitely think I think he's a top 3 player in the draft. I don't think he'll go top 3, but I think he's a top 3 player in the draft. It's not Obi Toppin purely because I think that James Wiseman is better. I do, and that's purely it. You could say, a lot of people say, and I think it's fair to say that LaMelo Ball is that he's got the most potential upside in this draft class. Mm-hmm. But he's the boom bust option. But in terms of somebody who I think is going to go into the league, do what they need to do, and do it well for their whole career, is James Wiseman.
But there's a lot of questions.
That's not good. That wasn't a crazy take. That was a good take.
I'm on board with that take. I'm okay with it. But there are a lot of questions about, first of all, about his running gait, the way that he runs. He just looks a little odd on times to me. But also defense. He's definitely got the athleticism there. But let's be honest. In recent years, you could argue that it's not been a big league unless you can stay on the court on the defensive end. So are there not concerns in that area?
I mean, to start off with, there definitely will be. I think in terms of his, defensive effort, that is definitely an area that warrants improvement. But I think in terms of his physical attributes, his length, he's got a 7'2" wingspan. His hand, has he? No, he hasn't. I just made that up. 7'5" or something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think he's around that. Yeah.
Yeah, 7'5" wingspan. He's got massive hands, as you'd expect, and he's got the athleticism as well, and he can slide. He's shown that he can slide. It's just a case of doing it on a consistent basis. He's got the tools and the potential to be able to guard 3 through 5.
Okay.
But I think it'll take some tweaking.
So he's your number 1 player, but not necessarily Tom's. Is he your number 2 player, Tom? What do you reckon?
I mean, that's the thing you can't say with this draft with any confidence, where people are going to go. I think my logic behind Toppin was that I think after next year, that looked like a really safe bet, and everyone say, "Oh, he's really good, could be rookie of the year." But then maybe in 5 or 10 years' time, you could be saying someone completely different. Wiseman's, it completely depends where he goes as well. Because if he goes to somewhere like the Warriors and they just decide to start him at centre straight away, he could look unbelievable in that system. But then if he goes, say if the Wolves decided to take him and play him with Towns or behind Towns, it just might not work at all, and he might be looking a few years down the line and he's getting traded and that kind of thing. You just don't know. So it completely depends on situation as well.
So there's a lot of questions.
Crazy take in there. Sorry, I'll throw another crazy take.
Go on.
This is what I said on Timberwolves Live at 5. Is that, and I read it in the Athletic, so I'm not making it up. This was an Athletic reporter who said this, but James Wiseman to the Wolves isn't as crazy as I think people think it is. A
little Twin Towers action, that could work.
He's not as well. It'll obviously be another defensive flaw for the Wolves, and for somebody who, myself, I coach at home, and my game schemes are very much defensive, and it's a massive pain in the bum whenever seeing the Wolves play because it frustrates the heck out of me because we're awful on defense. And it'll be a flaw there for the time being. But in terms of the offensive options I think it brings, I think it could be massive. If you get 2 players who can sit in the corner and take the threes, depending on what, whatever you get, you can have this kind of thing where you got D'Angelo Russell at the top. You get James Wiseman on one side, Killian Towns on the other side. They both set a screen. D'Angelo Russell can choose which way he wants to go. One of them can roll, one of them can pop, and you don't know which way it's going to be if James Wiseman continues to develop that jump shot that people think he's going to develop. I think that's in terms of a big man duo, Karl Anthony Towns and James Wiseman could actually be. It would surprise a few people. I genuinely think it would, but it wouldn't work as well immediately as the Warriors would. So I'd agree with Tom there.
Yeah, I think Richard Fang. Shout out to Richard Fang. I'm not sure I've seen him on the Twitch stream before, but thanks for joining us. He was saying that Wiseman can also shoot the three as well. So, you're not alone in thinking that. And I think his stats simply bear out that he can do that already. But going into next year, one of you has thrown out a third name in this discussion, which makes me think, well, maybe he's just the third best player in the draft. But he's probably the most famous player in the draft because he has a father who wants to sell his children like this, like is from history or something. And also he's been on the cover of Slam. He's he now owns a team that he used to play for in Australia. That is, of course, LaMelo Ball. I think 6'5" point guard. A very incredible shooter, but doesn't, from what I know of him, doesn't necessarily always take the best shot. But in Australia, his game has rounded out to be better than many people expected it to be when he was playing in Chino Hills, and it was just they had carte blanche to do whatever. It looks like he's really learned a little bit in the past year or so. So he's definitely not getting that top two then.
I think he's likely to get picked definitely in the top three. I think that would be a shock. His draft stock has been an absolute roller coaster over the past even just month. You've seen him, people saying he could drop as low as 8, and then you've got everyone in the last week, it seems like, saying that he's going to be the consensus number 1 pick. Personally, I've watched some of his film. I've done a lot of reading, and I just don't see this magnificent upside that people are saying he could have. Yes, he's got the size. He's a good passer, but all these question marks about bad interviews, like, is he going to buy in for the team mindset? Is he a locked-in defender? These are big question marks, and I'm not comparing him and saying he's going to be a bust like Fultz, but Fultz was someone who came in and was like leagues in the draft build-up was leagues above people like Tatum in terms of skill set, people were saying, but then his mindset was always a question. Is this going to be the same with LaMelo? Probably not to the extent of Fultz. He's just going to forget how to shoot one day.
I think if we do have any of the Orlando Magic UK community watching, first of all, I apologize. I'm not responsible for Tom Hall's comments. I've got nothing against Markel Fultz. Please don't come at me. It's
send them my way.
It's Tom Hall 789. Okay, that's where you can find him and throw all the slander to. Okay, so LaMelo Ball, he could be a bit of a bust. You feel, Tom? What do you think, Harry?
As I said, LaMelo Ball is the boom or bust option in this draft. He's either going to be incredible or a massive disappointment. And where he goes depends on who's choosing number 1. If the Minnesota offload the pick to Charlotte, say, which is the most likely one at this point, they'll trade down to 3. Charlotte will get the number 1. Charlotte will take James Wiseman because they like him. But if the Timberwolves keep the number 1 spot, they're taking LaMelo Ball. I personally am not a fan of that, but that's just the way it's looking like it's going to be, and he's either going to be on a par with, I'd say, his brother Lonzo, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If he can buy into improving his jump shot like Lonzo did, the work the Lakers and the Pelicans coaching staff have done with helping Lonzo get more of a fundamental technique and buy into that, and it's made Lonzo much more consistent over the first few years of his career. If he can do that, then I think he's got a real good chance of being quality. But as Tom said, it is mindset, and if he doesn't have the mindset, he will be the bust.
So there's some other players that do have bust potential. A couple of names have been thrown around in the Twitch chat. One of the names that intrigues me a lot is Deni Avdea. This Israeli Serbian guy who I guess plays a little bit like a stronger Lauri Markkanen. Is probably
maybe not as hot from 3, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Denny seems to prefer going to the rack a lot. He seems to prefer driving, but they both seem to like starting with the ball in the same place, if you will, on the court, But there's also a couple of others that we've got listed down here. I mean, what we haven't mentioned the Frenchman yet. What was his name?
Killian Hayes.
Killian Hayes. I mean,
Love him.
Yeah, he's drawing a lot of a lot of heat, but I think I don't fully know his background, but am I right in saying that he was born in America but grew up in France?
Yeah.
So he sort of, disappeared a little bit. And I think if it had been the other way around, if he'd been born in France and brought up in America, then it'd probably be a lot more chat around him. But what do you make of some of these sort of guys further down? It doesn't necessarily have to be Avdea or Hayes, but are there any other names that are jumping out to you?
So there's Tyrese Halliburton, who's another guard. He's a bit skinny, but he's another one that people are saying, if you want a safe bet, someone you can slide into a competitive situation, he's the guy that you can put in there, and he can ball handle, he can shoot, he can pass. He's a bit of an all-rounder, just maybe a bit skinny on the defensive end. Avdea I like. The other one that's been getting a lot of talk in the past 2 weeks is Patrick Williams, who is a really young wing. He's one of the youngest people in the draft at 18. And he was someone who was like late first round. People were saying he's going to go around there. It'll be a project. And then without any basketball being played, he has just risen. And now he's almost a consensus top 10. And there's a lot of noise around the Pistons taking him at 7. I don't know how it's taken me this long, 3/4 of the pod to drop this, but I've had one of the best weeks of my life because for some reason I managed to get access to the NBA draft media days on Zoom. Which I've never done anything like that before. So I got to chat to some of these guys, and I asked him, and he said it was just down to his agent doing a great job. Like, he's not aware of anything else that's caused his rise. So, Patrick Williams is an intriguing one. He'll be one of them where, we mentioned it earlier, I think his first year you won't see much of him, but then in 5 or 6 years' time, you might be like, oh, this guy, it's actually turned out all right.
What about you, Harry? Any players that are jumping out of the, beyond the top 3, top 5 area? Basically, absolutely. What I'm asking is who's going to fit well on the Spurs?
Well, I was actually, even for the Spurs, Isaac Okoro. I love Isaac Okoro. Like I said, when I coach, I'm defensive minded, and when I watch Isaac Okoro play, I'm like, I would love the opportunity to coach a player that's that dedicated and can play that role as well as Isaac Okoro can. He could quite easily defend every single perimeter spot, maybe a 4 as well, depending on how big they are. It's quite clearly he's the best perimeter defender, probably the best defender hands down in the draft class. And for the Spurs, I think even now, Isaac Okoro would be a great fit for San Antonio, just for that defense, and of course we know Greg Popovich likes that too. So,
great
Isaac
All-time
Okoro is my favourite all-time coach. He's an all-time coach. Isaac Okoro is the one I'm looking forward to watch wherever he lands. He ends up. I'm really looking forward to seeing Isaac Okoro in the NBA.
Okay, so this could start getting unwieldy now, and we need to start moving on a little bit, but. We've currently got Timberwolves number 1, Golden State 2, Hornets 3, Bulls 4, Cavs 5. What are we likely to see any of these? You guys have both mentioned it. This is not a superstar draft class. This is not Zion Williamson at the top, everybody battling for him. This is not like Anthony Davis. This is not LeBron James. This is not Tim Duncan. We don't have anyone that is going to change the NBA the moment they walk in onto the court. Who is most likely to trade down, do you think?
Oh, that's tough. I actually think the Timberwolves are most likely to trade down, if anybody. I think any of them would, if a good enough package came in. With the Warriors, it's such an interesting pick for them because, they can go one way and draft someone, and then they've got this great team now, but also a bit of hope for the future. Or they could go all in and try and get something for now as well, but then they've given up. 2 or 3 years down the line, they've got nothing left. So it's going to be a tricky one for them. I think it's probably the Wolves, if anybody, trading out. I don't know what the Wolves stand over there wants to say.
No. I hope my audio's all right. I just had to reconnect my mic. It's disconnected for some reason. So Kirk, I hope my mic's okay. But I think if anyone's going to trade down, it'll be either the Wolves or the Warriors. It'll be one of the top 2 because neither of them want the top 2 pick. The draft class isn't good enough.
So you say that though, but like Wiseman, to me, now I'm not a draft expert, admittedly, that's why you guys are here, but Wiseman seems like the perfect solution for the Warriors this year. So why would they not take him?
Just because he is raw. He's good, but he's raw. So like you could slot him in at the center spot, but then if you're realistically thinking about playing in the finals next year, is he going to be able to keep up with that? Like it might be a bit of an ask for him. And also, like we said, any of these guys could bust. There's no consensus that any of them are going to be great. So when you're over 7 foot, you've got a lot of advantages, but you've also got that worry of just being so lightweight and so flimsy and injury prone that you might never pan out. So,
okay, thank you for that, gentlemen. Enlightening, and I feel I've learned some stuff. There has been some fantastic articles on doubleclutch.uk. Both of you have done some stuff on the draft in the past few weeks. I was really interested in the top European draft prospects. That I think was that Tom. Was that yours, Tom?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what was the one that you were working on, Harry? That is completely escaping me now.
We've got after today, so maybe it'll probably all have to be crammed in tomorrow if we want to get it out before the actual draft. But myself, Tom, and I think it was Gerdegan.
Yeah,
I think I pronounced that right. I might have absolutely botched that. But we were going to work on a last-minute mock draft because I did a little almost big board of all the prospects maybe a month ago, maybe a bit more than that now, based off where we projected people to be picking. But that was before the lottery. So now we know where people are going to be picking, and we've got the most up-to-date, last-minute big boards and mocks. We're going to chuck something together on a mock draft, essentially, where we reckon people are going to be drafted.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll hopefully by the time that this comes out in podcast form, if you're listening to this on any of your podcast players, hopefully that article will be live. So make sure you check that out. Yeah. But we're going to go into Discord we're going to go into some of the Discord questions that we've had come in. If you're not a member of our Discord community, then make sure you go to what's the link? I've lost it. discord.me/doubleclutch. I'm such a pro, aren't I, guys? Oh, Mike, come back. This is going terribly. So we're going to go into some of the questions. But one of the things that has come up on the Twitch live chat as we've been going is the Mike, who actually, Mike, why aren't you hosting this? You've been doing a much better job.
He's running it from the Twitch.
You're running it from the Twitch. You're throwing in these questions. Mike is asking, what were some of the takeaways from the draft media that you did, Tom? Any players or any interviews or any teams that you thought that really stood out to you that maybe you're going to write about or maybe you want to tell us about right now?
Yeah, I mean, so understandably, most of them were very well polished, not giving anything away. Everyone was asking about, have you worked out with this team? Have you had Zoom calls with this team? And everyone was playing it fairly close to the chest in terms of, I'd be happy to play anywhere, and I'd fit in well with everyone. There was, I think the biggest surprise for me was Tyrese Maxey he's the point guard out of Kentucky. He was by far the most animated and the most like bubbly personality. He seems like a great guy. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you've got Theo Maledon, who is another player from France who's playing for Tony Parker's team. A very young guy again. Maybe it was just because his language skills weren't there to the extent of the American guys, but that was like trying to get blood out of a stone. Both me and Josh Coyne from Double Clutch were on that call, and we were messing each other like, this guy is rough to talk to. So I think they were at each end of the spectrum. Everyone else seemed to be all right. Isaac Okoro, you mentioned Harry as well. He was pretty quiet actually, but again, he's another young guy. So maybe it's just these guys developing maturity, and it must be nerve-wracking. You forget. I'm getting nervous asking the questions to these like future NBA stars, but these are just like 18, 19-year-old kids. Yeah, with like 100 journalists on the other line. So fair play to him for what must be a rough gig.
Yeah, it's it must be terrifying, definitely. I ended up joining the media call with Gerson Rosas earlier today, and one of the main takeaways was that he was absolutely not committed to drafting a player this year. He was very much open to, getting the, trading and bringing in an established star. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Okay, let's burn through a couple of these ones from Discord then. Jonah asked, do you think the Warriors will keep/use the number 2 pick or trade it? We spoke about this a little bit, but I sort of suggested that Wiseman is the man to pick in that scenario. But either of you got anything that you wanted to add to that?
I say trade it. They'll probably be able to find somebody who's played in the NBA for a good few seasons who can do a similar role in free agency, and might be able to fare up better if they want to go to the finals and win another championship. I say trade it, and invest in a free agent. That's what I'm saying.
I like the idea of trading it. I just think when you've got this positive asset like the number 2 pick, the salary you're probably going to have to attach to that is Wiggins, which then brings the value right back down again. So I'm not too sure it's worth it for them. So I'd probably say use it on Wiseman.
Okay, Rich Barrett, shout out to Rich. He said, you're an NBA GM, you have the chance to take LaMelo, but knowing that you're also going to be getting his dad in the sort of selection there. Now, I felt that personally, I felt that, maybe it's because Lonzo is in a new place. He's not in the bright spotlight of LA, but we haven't really seen much of his dad so much the past year or so. Do you reckon he's going to rear his ugly head again, though, and we're gonna see a lot more of him now that LaMelo is being drafted?
I've seen him with Stephen A.
Would you draft LaMelo knowing that he's around?
He puts me off. Funnily enough, I tried to get an interview with LeVar about 6 months ago during lockdown. And he said he would do something with me, but I sent him this list of questions all about his sons, and he said, "No, I'm only going to talk about Big Brawler Brand." So I get the impression just from that he's been told off, he's been slapped on the wrist, and he can't talk about him anymore.
This was during his failed relaunch of Big Baller Brand, wasn't it? Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Harry? Would you draft LaMelo knowing that you've got the entire Ball family and a reality TV show joining you?
I'm having a tech issue with my ear. Apologies. I couldn't hear what.
Would you be interested in drafting LaMelo?
Yeah, I would personally.
even with his dad coming in just behind him. Seems to have lost your mic again there.
I think we've lost your voice, Harry. Never mind.
We've lost you, Harry. We'll move on to the next question while you figure out the audio. Matt Hardy, he says, am I the only person that remembers Hang Time? And no, Matt, you're not. Hang Time, we were hanging together, putting it on the line. Hang Time, always remember. Give it up for Hang Time. No, that was a great show. We had a bit of a Discord chat about that, and I shared some great video of Julie getting really destroyed in the pick and roll. So if you do want to join Discord for all this fun chat, then make sure you do. Ross, who has been live on the Twitch chat today, but he sent in a question via Discord. Does Sam Presti have a plan for all these picks he's collected, or is he just a big Pokemon fan at heart? What do we think? Is he actually? What's he going to do with it? Is this a Boston situation where they had like 1 million draft picks a few years ago? They're going to turn it into some stars in the next 3 years. What do you reckon?
I think if I was in that job as the GM, you clear out your cap space, which is exactly what they're doing for 2021. See if you can lure in any free agents, and then you've got all these draft picks as well for if that doesn't work out, or even if it does, you can trade on the fringes then to land the exact player that you want. Imagine saying, I've got some salary here plus 17 first round picks. There's probably not a player in the league that you'd struggle to get. So, Danny Ainge of Boston, when he was doing that, said that picks are the best assets to have just because they're so flexible. There's no salary attached to them. You can do whatever you want with them down the line. So things are looking good for OKC.
And Harry, quick 30 seconds if your mic is working. What do you think is the best?
Is it okay?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think they're just setting themselves up for the future, aren't they? They can use a couple of these first round picks to bring in some quality talent and then trade some of them away for some stars if they when they want to start switching the script to let's go get a championship now. So I think it's looking really good for the Thunder. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, well, I think we'll wrap it up there. But before we do, I wanted to give a shout out to both of you gentlemen for picking up the slack on the draft chat. It was a real pleasure to hang out with you. But also a big shout out to Kirk for producing this wonderful live show. Even with all the audio issues, I mean, we'll have a chat with Harry afterwards. Next. Don't worry, Kirk, it'll be fine.
Apologies, I'm so sorry.
You're all good, man. You're all good. But also a shout out to some of the new followers that we've had this week. So on Discord, Vapor_Trench. But also on Twitch, we had Hickey96, In the Huddle UK, OKC_UK, Callum Cardiff, and Richard Fang 8. So thank you to all of you guys for joining us for the live show, and we hope you stick around for next week as well. And we'll have plenty more content coming up, especially on the website doubleclutch.uk, where some recent articles. Harry, you wrote about Drew Holiday and getting him on a bunch of different teams. How do you acquire Drew Holiday? Tom, you did a piece on the top European draft prospects, which you mentioned, but also shout out to Aoife, who joined us a few months ago, but she's got a piece up on the rise of Sabrina Ionescu, the next face of the WNBA, and we'll have plenty of draft content coming up in the next few days. So make sure you stick around, and we'll see you live again next week. Thanks
guys. See you soon.
No, God! No, God, please, no! No! No!